If you're the kind of IT pro who's already stared at a blinking red light on a rack and thought, I need something that just works, won't make my day-to-day any harder, and actually protects my gear without costing a fortune, then this is the conversation you're looking for. Buying a UPS isn't about ticking off a list of megawatts and LCD screens. It's about making sure your servers, network switches, or even a small home lab stay online long enough to shut down cleanly, and that the unit itself doesn't become another headache. That tension between wanting rock-solid reliability and fearing you'll waste money on a box that's either overkill or under-delivered is what most people feel before they click Add to Cart. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The APC SMX2200RMHV2U Smart UPS-X sits in the 2200VA class, which translates to roughly 1/600 watts of usable power. For many small to medium data centers, that's enough to keep a handful of rack servers, a core switch, and a storage array alive for the critical 5 to 10 minutes you need to either ride through a brief outage or fire off a graceful shutdown script. What matters more than the headline VA number is how that power is delivered and how the unit behaves when the lights flicker. First off, the rack-mountable form factor is a big win if you already have a 42U cabinet. The unit slides right into a standard 19-inch rack, and the LCD panel faces forward so you can glance at voltage, load, and battery health without pulling a cable. In practice, that means you can confirm at a glance that your load is hovering around 30%, well within the sweet spot APC recommends for extending battery life rather than having to log into a remote management interface every time you want to double-check. I've seen technicians who keep a UPS in a remote closet and never open the front panel. The LCD becomes the quick visual cue they rely on during routine checks. One of the hidden trade-offs with any high-capacity UPS is the weight and heat. The SMX2200RMHV2U weighs close to 150 pounds, so you'll need a solid rack and possibly a lift if you're installing it solo. The unit also runs warm during a full load discharge, which is normal, but you should make sure the rack's airflow isn't obstructed. In a tightly packed rack with multiple power strips, you might notice the temperature in that section climb a few degrees higher than the rest of the cabinet. That's not a deal-breaker, but it's something to account for when you're planning your cooling budget. Battery runtime is another practical point. APC quotes about 10 minutes at half load, and real-world tests from a handful of system integrators line up with that figure. If your servers draw 800 watts, you can expect roughly 8 minutes before the battery is depleted. That window is enough for most UPS-driven shutdown scripts to finish, but if you're running a mission-critical environment that can't afford even a minute of downtime, you'll still need an additional backup strategy, perhaps a generator or a secondary UPS in parallel. The key is to match the UPS runtime to the criticality of the equipment you're protecting, not just assume the higher VA rating automatically covers every scenario. The Smart UPS-X series also includes network management capabilities. Out of the box you get a built-in Ethernet port that talks to APC's PowerShoot network software. In day-to-day use, that lets you set up email alerts for battery replacement, schedule automatic shutdowns, and monitor load trends over time. The software isn't a full-blown NMS, but for a small shop it's more than enough to avoid surprise failures. The only downside is the learning curve. You'll spend a couple of hours initially configuring SNMP traps or the email server, which can be a bit intimidating if you've never dealt with UPS networking before. Once it's set up, though, the remote monitoring pays dividends. You'll get a text when the battery starts to sag, and you can swap it out before it affects your uptime. Who should actually buy this unit? If you run a server room that houses between 2 and 6 rack servers, a core router, and maybe a small SAN, and you're looking for a UPS that fits cleanly into your existing rack without taking up floor space, the SMX2200RMHV2U is a solid match. It also makes sense for a dedicated lab environment where you need to protect expensive hardware but don't want a giant floor-standing tower taking up valuable bench space. The LCD, network interface, and ample runtime at moderate loads make it a very practical choice for anyone who wants a set-and-forget solution that still gives you enough data to plan future capacity. On the flip side, If your setup is a single workstation or a tiny home office with a few peripherals, you're probably paying for capacity you'll never use. In that scenario, a smaller 500VA desktop UPS would meet your needs at a fraction of the price and without the heavy rack mount hardware. Likewise, if you operate a large enterprise data center with